Do hope that you had a good weekend. Mine was fantastic. A little bit exhausting, but well worthwhile. Highlight of my weekend would, church was good. But Saturday, getting to spend time with the good folk at the Free Speech Union was the AGM. And honestly, AGM, gosh, that sounds boring. Not the way Free Speech Union does it. What a fantastic event. Lots of speakers, lots of important, robust discussions, and an international guest in the mix as well. And leading the team organising this event is, he's the events guy at Free Speech Union. Nathan, kia ora. Good morning. Thanks for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having me, Andrew. And I'll note our team had that conversation about whether or not AGM was too sterile of a title. It was just the only one I could spell, so we ran with it.
and hey, a challenge to all other organisations to do an AGM which is as interesting as the event that happened on Saturday, as well as, okay, you did the business thing, but also a range of different speakers talking on some important and controversial topics. Quite the guest lineup, Nathan.
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, we sort of initiated this style last year, but we wanted to host discussions that were broad and full of expertise. And so we talked about the state of media, the state of politics, academia. I said the media. Where else did we go? We went into legal perspective.
Yep.
But yeah, we didn't just get sort of anybody up there. We really were lucky to have people like Honourable David Seymour and Paul Goldsmith. We had Peter Williams there, who's obviously an absolute legend in New Zealand media. So our panels were high quality, and you say there's a formal element. Obviously, it's about 7 minutes at the end of the day, so it's sort of like you eat your veggies last, but the rest of the day was pretty great.
No, very good indeed. Hey, highlight of my day was being able to spend some time with Professor Nigel Biggar. Now, this conversation, we filmed it on location. We're going to play out the audio of that interview a little bit later in the show, just after 12 midday. We videoed it. As I say, we're hoping to get that on YouTube in the next day or so. I mean, this guy, what a legend, both, connected with the Free Speech Union, but also in terms of his academic background, an ethics professor at Oxford, and some important things to say on a topic which is very pertinent to New Zealand at the moment, looking at colonialism. Yeah,
I mean, Professor Biggar's an esteemed professor of Oxford University. He's a professor of, like you say, ethics and moral theology. I was challenged as an aspiring theologian and a Christian. Just speaking to him, I was quite lucky to spend a bit of time in cars and whatnot, traveling between spaces. But he came over on the back of writing this book, this incredible book called Colonialism, A Moral Reckoning. And he simply asked the question, was all of colonialism bad, as we're constantly told? And I think he does an incredible job unpackaging that. And so, like you say, it's quite timely to be here in New Zealand as we enter into this really public discussion around the treaty. What are the principles? What does that mean? How does that interact with life as a Kiwi many years after it was written? Is there still a use or a need for that? And Professor Biggar has just previously been in Australia looking at a similar situation with the Aboriginal people and how the Australian government is doing that. So he brought some really valuable insight and a lot of wisdom that I think challenged me, changed my views, but also really helped me to think through things a lot more from a sort of a higher level, as opposed to sort of just some of the lines we see thrown around online and in the media sometimes.
He's also got his own personal story of getting cancelled and having his career shut down and all of those sorts of things. And that actually inspired him to be part of a group which formed the Free Speech Union in the UK. But so important to be having these robust conversations, the slightly awkward ones, the ones which families get into arguments about over the Christmas table, but better to talk about them than to push those feelings down. Better to air the laundry, as it were.
Exactly. And Nigel spoke extensively about the moral obligation that we all carry to speak the truth. But he doesn't neglect to acknowledge our moral obligation to be mindful of others. Yep. And there's a question I asked him about. I said, well, what's more important, speaking truth or speaking without intent to offend? And it's a balance that we often find hard to strike. But I truly believe, and what Professor Biggar was leading into, was that truth is ultimately what leads us to more freedom to more prosperity. And so there is a balance there. There's a tenet there. I think, as Christians, we believe speaking truth and love.
Yeah.
And I think it's something we need to be mindful of. But Professor Bigger really unpackages that idea quite expertly, obviously. He's got the paper to prove it.
Yeah.
That truth is the thing that we need to be thinking about. Truth is the thing we need to be sharing. Truth is the thing. And truth shouldn't divide us to the point where we hate each other.
Mm-hmm.
It might cause a bit of friction, but iron sharpens iron. There's room for growth in conflict. So I thought it was an absolutely brilliant take on the moral obligations of truth and relationally building a community that respects each other.
Exactly. I think that is the important point. I mean, you can say, hey, I've got to speak the truth and all that type of stuff, but there's no point just being obnoxious about it. That if you offend everybody and nobody wants to hang around with you and chat with you, then how useful is your truth in that context? It is with gentleness and respect, as the scriptures say. Yes, have a reason for what we believe, but let's not bash each other over the head with truth. That's not what it's for, right?
No, it was, and he drew heavily on the life of Jesus. Obviously, Jesus was a fairly polarizing figure in his time, and a lot of the elites or so-called leaders of that society didn't appreciate it. But he knew what he was saying was ultimately, objectively true, and had a greater purpose to serve. So sometimes we really have to walk that tension as everyday people, where what we really say, sure, we could curry favor with everybody, but favor with man is enemy against, or is sort of against God in some regards, So no, it was really insightful.
Now I'm looking forward to presenting the conversation that I had with Professor Bigger. That's coming up after 12 midday, focusing in on what does decolonization mean, and how practical is that, and how does that fit within the story? So that conversation coming up a little bit later in the show. Yeah. Also, Nathan, though, wanted to talk about a reason to celebrate the Free Speech Union celebrating a bit of a back down in the case of Paul Burns. What's the situation here, Nathan?
Well, yeah, I would say it's a little bit more than a little reason to celebrate. It's absolutely huge. I think it's monumental in our journey as a Free Speech Union. I think it's going to be a case that we'll remember often, and that will stoke hope in our heart for the future of Free Speech in New Zealand. But Paul Burns is a great man. He's a Catholic, and the story goes that one Sunday in March, when he'd finished Mass, he's gone and he's fellowshipped. He's gone out to the streets in Wellington.
Yep.
He's gone out to the city of Wellington, and what he loves to do is he loves to encourage public discussion and public debate. And he has a sign, and the sign says $100, and the money's taped to the board, and it says $100 to anyone who can convince me that abortion is more evil than slavery. Mm-hmm. And he stands there. And he said, and also I should add, he gives out free chocolates.
Okay.
He's servicing a few things there, and people approach him and they debate him, and he listens to them and he challenges them. And for the most part, it's been something that he's just done out of his own passion for free speech, his own passion for his personal moral beliefs. He was approached by a group of young sort of debaters who wanted to challenge him, and their argument was that abortion is necessary because the world is overpopulated. Mm-hmm. So Paul, being a logical and rational adult, said, well, if that is the solution, then the most rational, logical place to start is with yourself. Why don't you kill yourself? Which is obviously a shocking statement to make. But it's logical, it's rational, it's reasonable. At that point, another bystander called the police and said, there's a man out here encouraging suicide. The police showed up and actually arrested Paul. Mm-hmm. Now, when Paul contacted us, our immediate response from our legal team was, there's no way you were arrested for saying that. You have to have said something else. You have to have done something else. But on receiving the summary of facts, it's true. He was arrested under a section of the Summary Offences Act where they said he was speaking with intent to offend. Wow. Now, our legal team looked at this case and said, it's an open shut case. We'll just get the case thrown out. There's nothing there. There's no legs on it. We'll be able to have Paul home safe and stress-free in no time. Just before it went before the judge, the police actually trumped up their charges. They actually took it to another level and said that it actually was a more serious charge of disorderly behavior likely to cause a violent response. Wow. Now, we were absolutely shocked when the police did this. We couldn't believe it. Our lawyers, who have seen many, many cases, couldn't believe it. Ultimately, we dug our heels in, we put our head down, we worked with Paul, who, by the way, has had many sleepless nights as a result of this, who has had a lot of stress, a lot of turmoil. He was facing jail time and a fine. And Paul is just a guy who is using his speech freely. Ultimately, we got before the courts. They threw out the case immediately because there's just no grounds, and we've been able to celebrate. And Paul has been extremely thankful for the support of us, obviously, the Free Speech Union, but our supporters for making his story public. So Paul is a free man. Paul is a man who doesn't have a criminal record, which he didn't deserve anyway.
Yeah.
But the best part about it all at the end is Paul stands before the judge, and his defense lawyer is standing there on the wings, and he says to the judge, "Excuse me, Your Honor, I just want to tell you one more thing." The judge says, "Yes. Well, I want you to know that Jesus loves you."
Wow.
And our defense lawyer almost fell over because he said all the things that he's heard people tell judges, that is the greatest that he's ever heard.
That is
so. Yeah, it's a great success for free speech and a great victory.
That is very cool, and well, good on Paul for communicating his faith even in front of the judge who could have sentenced him to some jail time there. So certainly some good things to celebrate there, and perhaps some lessons learned. In the way in which we communicate. That sometimes even if our intention is good, people can misinterpret that. But having a case where somebody overheard a conversation somebody else was having, was offended on their behalf. I'm not sure how that is a criminal offence, but now we've got some case law to back that up. Nathan, thank you so much.
No worries. Yeah, I will say communication's obviously not just what you say about how people hear it, but that shouldn't deter you from saying the truth. That shouldn't make you scared of standing up for what you believe to be true, right, and honourable. So we're really, really happy with the result.
Now, thanks again for the work that you do at the Free Speech Union. I know you've got some more events and some more busy things to be getting on with between now and the end of the year. Look forward to talking more in future about that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Angie.
Hey, thanks very much for joining us in the Rhema studio. Thanks very much for watching the interview. It's kind of nice to have an audience, actually. And if you did like what you watched, then do give us a like, do give us the thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more interviews like that one, or perhaps even better, subscribe and those interviews will come straight to you. Don't forget to turn on your notifications, and we'll see you in the next one. Cheers.